Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Invictus Racing Podcast. Once again, it's episode 5. You're here with me, Gareth, joined as always by Sab, and I say a very good evening to yourself.
Good evening. It's good to be back on our new slot this evening. We've had a first rounds of action this week in Invictus. It'd be good to talk about that later and other things regarding real F1.
Absolutely, we've got a packed episode tonight, guys, and quick running order for the likes of you watching up. We've got talking about McLaren. You can see him scrolling around on screen at the moment. Want to have a quick chat with Sam about his beloved McLaren and their somewhat resurgence we've seen over the last few races. Equally, we've got the British Grand Prix coming up in a few days' time. Cannot wait for that. Of course, a lot of our community members are already at Silverstone and will be there for the weekend. So hopefully we'll hear from them over the weekend. We'll be able to give you some social media content and equally get some stuff on the website hopefully towards the end of next week, so that should be good. And then equally, I'm sure you're all aware, guys, and there has been huge buzz, especially online in the last few days or so, about the Haas and the Rich Energy debacle going on, and we've just had some breaking updates from on Twitter. So yeah, cannot wait to get into that and find out what you guys are thinking. And make sure if you're watching, guys, drop a comment in. Let us know if you're watching, where you're watching from, and also if we're talking about something, get involved. Let us know, and if you're listening to this back, don't worry, we'll read it all out. We'll get you as involved as possible. But yeah, so to start with, guys, as I said before, my name's Gareth. Sab is joining me, and we are the commentators for the No Assist League here, Invictus Racing League. Invictus Racing League, an esports league for Formula One. We also race GT Sport and Project Cars, and equally we've been dabbling in FIFA 19. So if you are new to us, go to invictusracingleague.com where you can find out all the details and a lot more about what we do. But getting on into the podcast, and the first thing up is that of the papaya orange and blue McLaren. And Sab, you're a dedicated and passionate McLaren fan, and looking at it from as a fan, it's so nice to see McLaren kind of what looks like in the last few races getting back to sort of where we'd like to see them.
Definitely, but for me, it's very easy for myself to get carried away and start saying, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." McLaren themselves have been caught out by false promises and whatnot in the past with promises of challenging for race wins and stuff. So you've got to try and remain grounded. But at the minute, it is looking rather good for the team. They clearly are at the moment the fourth best team on the grid. Renault lagging behind slightly. It's going to be interesting to see. I think the car will suit this circuit this weekend. Bit of luck as well that always needed, that they can pick up some more points. But at the moment, for me, they are the fourth best team there. It's looking much better to see them there fighting for good points rather than fighting at the back. I don't know what your opinion on it is, but for me, you've just got to try and, with how tightly packed that midfield is, you've just got to try and remain calm, even though it's good to get excited about it. Remain calm and just take it race by race, because you could have two or three great races like McLaren have had, and then you might find yourself struggling slightly on a different track, dependent on whether the car suits it or not.
Yeah, I don't know if we're in a situation now where McLaren are kind of overperforming, or if it's because their competition are underperforming. Because we've seen Renault struggle in the last few races. Haas have completely dropped off since the start of the season, where it looked like they were coming into Australia. They looked almost nailed on to be the fourth place team, and we knew that they had close ties with Ferrari, and the Ferrari were pretty much handing them all of their used stuff. And I'm quite disappointed with how things have ended up in Haas. And then equally, I think Toro Rosso kind of haven't really done anything. So I think McLaren at the moment are just doing the best with what they've got. And I think, I don't know, I don't know what your opinion is, but I think ever since Fernando left the team, it's kind of helped them. And although you had arguably one of the best race car drivers of all, or Formula One race car drivers of all time in your team, I think there was a lot of negativity surrounding Fernando, and he was obviously quite bitter towards how the end of his career went there. But obviously now you've got Carlos and Lando in there, and they just seem to have completely re-energized the team. Their relationship together seems completely different to what we saw last season from Fernando and Stoffel, and I think it's probably a fundamental change. Yes, you've seen a lot of changes behind the scenes for McLaren. You've seen a lot of the upper management come in and change things around. But I think even just to the trackside stuff with the drivers and their mentality, and you can just imagine. I mean, we've just seen the press conference with Lando laughing and joking around. That I'm sure that brings that sort of enthusiasm, that kind of young banter and fun to a team, and not just to the guys in the garage, but everyone in back at Woking.
Definitely, it's like you say, it is a breath of fresh air really within the team now. Fernando is, don't get me wrong, he's a world-class racer, and he did bring a lot to the team. He dragged that car in the past few years to positions what you wouldn't have expected it to, but he's really high maintenance and demands so much that it will probably a strain and draining as well on team morale and stuff. So to bring in two fresh new people in, a young whippersnapper, so to speak, in Lando, who's wanting to try and show what he's got, and Carlos Sainz, the experienced guy. It's funny to say that he's 24, 25, and he's the experienced guy now. It's a good mixture of personalities within the team. It's definitely looked like in terms of the setup now they've got, especially that they are moving very fast forward in F1 now. Yes, they want to be fighting for podiums and race wins, where a team like McLaren should be fighting up at the front there. But that will come. Lando said that will come. You've got to wait until regulations come along. But wherever this momentum is going, you've just got to go with it, haven't you? Really, they've just recently announced both drivers will be signed on for 2020, which is great news. That shows more solidarity within the team. So, yeah, at the minute it is the light at the end of the tunnel is firmly there now from this dark period what we've been in with the team.
Yeah, I think really the only way was forwards for McLaren after such a kind of tumultuous time they had with Honda, and equally last season was a low point as well. So I think they've only got for their forwards is really the only place they can go, and yeah, it's good to see, because like deep down I'm a McLaren fan. I've always enjoyed watching them growing up, and when it was like sort of growing up through the 90s, it was David Coulthard, Mika Hakkinen, Kimi Raikkonen, Jensen, Lewis. They were the drivers that kind of was sitting in the silver Mercedes at the time, and so yeah, it's always good to see McLaren, because essentially this is where they should be. Of course, you have to earn your way into being one of the big teams, and you can't just kind of rest on your laurels. And it's good to see McLaren have kind of gone back to basics, stripped the car back to something new, and tried again. And same goes. It's like what we see with Williams, and obviously you want to see Williams get sort of back to a position where they can be somewhat respectable. And I'm sure all those Williams fans out there would be feeling the same about how they do about McLaren. But I mean, talk about Lando, is he? What's his ceiling? Is he a future world champion? Is he a race winner? If he is a race winner, where's he going to do it? Can McLaren give him a race car that's worthy of a race win, or is he going to have to or is he going to get poached by the likes of Mercedes in the future, or someone like that?
It's interesting, isn't it? That I think that was a signal of intent from McLaren signing up Lando and Carlos early on, just to keep prying eyes away for now. The team obviously want to be up there fighting and giving Lando and Carlos an opportunity to fight for podiums and wins. And if it's possible, then Lando will stay at McLaren. You'd have to say, for me personally, if any of those drivers really on the grid getting that Mercedes, you're fighting for wins and potential championships because it's just the best car. So for me, if Lando can keep this crest wave going and the team keep going and keep pushing forward, then hopefully, from my selfish point of view, Lando stays at the team and we can build a team around him and try and give him a car, especially when the 2021 regulations come in. We can give him a car then what he can really fight at the front with. If that's not possible, then unfortunately, all race drivers want to win and want to be champion. Otherwise, what's the point in going into F1? So unfortunately, if it comes to a point where 2, 3 years down the line we're still not quite there, giving him that chance of a podium or race wins, then then who knows? Someone like a Mercedes or Ferrari could come in and say, look, we've got a car. Would you like to join us? I'm not sure what you think of Lando. Do you believe he's a future champion? For me, I think he definitely is a future champion. It just all depends on regulations and where he's going to end up in his career.
See, I've watched Lando throughout his early career in growing up for the junior Formula, and I've always maintained that he was going to end up in Formula One. I think McLaren kind of saw him as their next Lewis Hamilton, and they've kind of nurtured that talent. They've brought him through F2. He had a seat in Carlin, which is a nice seat to be in because it's a decent team, and there's a lot of development that goes on behind the scenes there. So I think he was very well placed to kind of have a decent attack at a championship in both F3 and F2, and obviously just missed out to George last season in F2. So yeah, I think he's a breath of fresh air in Formula One. He certainly brings out the youthful side in a lot of drivers. You can see him making the likes of Kimi laugh and Daniel laugh, and so I think Formula One is kind of better off without him at the moment, or better off with him. Sorry, and better off with him because yeah, he's bringing that sort of just air of positivity. You can tell that when he's on the radio, even when he gets given some bad news, he just takes it on the chin. He just gets on with it. So yeah, I think he can definitely. It's interesting because I think you look at all the three British drivers. I say British, but George, Lando, and Alex. Of course, Alex rides under the Thai flag. But you look at those three, and I think there's this huge amount of potential in all three. And I think it's very easy at the moment for people to kind of brush over George Russell's talents because he's sitting in such an uncompetitive car. But
Yeah.
there's a reason why he won the F2 championship last season, and he is a driver waiting to sit in the Mercedes team. And I wouldn't say I'm biased. I have been a big fan of George Russell. I think he's a magnificent driver, but I do think that he kind of deserves it over Ocon. I think he's just a raw pace. I think he's a quicker driver than Esteban. I think he's probably a lot more level-headed. Obviously, we saw Esteban getting involved with quite a few incidents with Sergio, and although Perez is not exactly a saint, I think the both of them kind of went at each other, and I don't think you'll get that from George. I think he's very much a team player, and of course you don't want someone to be a lapdog, but I think George is the right sort of person to get in a car and just knuckle down and get on with it. And I think you see the same in Lando but then equally in Alex. So I think Alex has been fantastic this season. I think him and Daniel have been really good in the Toro Rossos with what they've got. So I think Red Bull have got an interesting decision to make come the end of the season, whether they stick with Gasly or I mean the problem for Alex is that he's not signed to he's never been in the Red Bull Junior program, so he's not been ingrained in their sort of academy before, so he's going to have to really work to impress them. But I think he's definitely got the at the moment he's got the pace and the credibility to step up into Red Bull. But yeah, with Lando, I think if he's got the right car underneath him, he's definitely got a shot with being a world champion one day, because he's just he's just one of those drivers like we've seen recently with like the likes of Charles and with Max that's just got that raw pace that are very, although they're all very different drivers. We see Charles kind of is quite hard on himself if he gets things wrong. Max is very fiery, and Lando is the complete opposite. He's very completely chilled. But I think that's a perfect sort of mix for what hopefully will be for the next 5 or 10 years, like a brilliant set of drivers to hopefully battle over a world championship.
Yeah, and I totally agree with SJD. The future is in good hands with these young drivers in F1 now. You can clearly see the new generations coming through. It's funny. I keep thinking as Daniel Ricciardo is in his early 20s still. He's been around for that long now. You don't realise he's 30 now, so he's now also classed as one of the old guard, so to speak. So yeah, with like the people you've just mentioned, Charles, Lando, George Russell, and the likes, all in F1 now. I think if F1 can sort itself out and make it more competitive for more teams, then you definitely are going to have a very exciting future with F1 with all these great talents coming through now.
Absolutely. So yeah, the future is looking bright for McLaren. Hopefully they get back to a position where we see them fighting over podiums, and I think the more these two in the cockpit at the moment can kind of push the cars forward and get some good results, and it's obviously going to keep the guys in the factory motivated to keep working, and yeah, hopefully we'll see the guys up there at the front for the rest of the season and moving on. Moving on to the next thing, we'll just quickly touch on this for the next 5 minutes or so, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about how it's going on, and that's Haas and of course Rich Energy. So you've seen everything that's going on Twitter recently. What's your thoughts on what we've seen with Rich Energy and Haas F1?
Um, I I think you've got to try and separate Haas, haven't you? So we were talking off there just before and just briefly. We thought Rich Energy deleted the tweet and stuff. I think Twitter is having a problem at the minute because no tweets or nothing are loading. So I don't know if that is the reason why we can't load that tweet. But Rich Energy, going on to them, they've just become a joke now. Nobody heard of them in Formula One at the beginning. And instead of, if you're a new company or a new person coming into a new environment, you want to try and make friends and build bridges. But instead, all they've insisted on doing is attack, 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 and it's just infuriating to see. I don't follow Rich Energy, but I see a lot of people retweeting their stuff, and the garbage they tweet out for a supposedly professional company is it's just like watching an episode of EastEnders. It's just the sort of stuff they come out and say is ridiculous. And recently, with them saying that they've terminated the contract with Haas, and then suddenly it's a rogue employee. It's just, you just don't know what on earth to believe with them anymore. Everything that comes out of their mouth is just an absolute drama. And I think, are they doing it on purpose to create publicity? Or, I don't know. I read one rumor that they'd run out of money. It's nuts and ludicrous, and every other word you could probably think of. What is your opinion on Rich Energy, especially
What?
this week?
Obviously, they lost their court case and then the appeal to White Bikes about the logo. It was completely nailed on, and it was pretty much from the start that they stolen the likeness of the logo. Why they thought I'd say I imagine it's William Story decided to fight this as much as he has, go on Twitter and publicly try and defame White Bikes and try and hit them with weird half personal jabs. He's been taking on journalists and even ex members of the Top Gear team on Twitter, and it's just I don't know. You can see the White Bikes. We've seen the story today. You can see with Rich Energy, that they've had the investors are saying it's a rogue person. We know that it's William Story that's sending these tweets because they've got a history of it. We've seen tweets in the past where they've been trying to defame Red Bull. They've made weird claims that they were faster than Red Bull because they beat them in one practice session and in pre-season, and yeah, you get the hashtag faster and better than Red Bull, and it's you feel bad, and trust me, Gene Haas, the owner of Haas F1, is no saint. He's been to prison for tax fraud and things like that before, so he is no savior. But you have to feel embarrassed for the guys at Haas because
Yeah.
it's and we've all watched the Drive to Survive Netflix series, and we know that Steiner he's very much say it as it is, and I'm really looking forward to the new season coming out because this is going to be a great episode because
Oh yes.
it's you must think everyone sitting in that garage just wants him to either just go away or to just kind of get on with it, but it's all of this sort of negativity and arguing that the irony is that he tweeted out originally when he said, "Oh, it's performance based," which is rubbish because Magnussen qualified in fifth last race, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not performance based at all. Um, but then equally, he said that there's too much politics and political correctness in Formula One. How I don't understand saying that political correctness is in Formula One. What's he expecting? Like what's he expecting from an FIA standard? Like what the pinnacle of motorsport that people could just rock up on the day, say what they want, do what they want, like almost take it back to like a 1960s sort of vibe where you've just got people just kind of making up their own rules about the cars, and so it's a shame because it has really tarnished Haas's season,
Yeah.
it's it's really gonna I think it's really gonna hurt them because their season has kind of gone from bad to worse recently. We've seen them have struggles in Canada when Kevin hit the wall and had his car rebuilt, and then he's just arguing down the radio until Gunter had to tell him to shut up. Like, and obviously you've had this kind of going on in the background, and now it's come to a head. And obviously Haas then released a statement saying that they are still the title sponsor and that they are because of a commercial contract. And yeah, the contracts don't work. You can't just go on Twitter and say, okay, we're not doing this with you anymore. It doesn't work like that. You've signed a contract
No.
unless they're planning on paying a lot of money to Haas as a get out clause. I'd imagine it's in the contract. I think yeah, Haas have got pretty much the entire backing of the courts if they try and get out of it, and it probably is, as we were saying before, because they've run out of money. I imagine they've lost this court case, and a lot of the things they're going to have to do. They're going to have to supply white bikes with all of the lists of their records of financing and where they're selling, all supposedly selling rich energy, seeing as it doesn't seem like you can buy it in any supplier in the UK, even though it's marketed as the UK's best energy drink. Um, so yeah, I think it's going to be interesting over the next few days and weeks to find out a little bit more about what's gone on internally at Rich.
Definitely. Just going back on what you were saying about Haas struggles, I don't know if you've seen today, but apparently they've reverted the car back to the Australia spec. What Grosjean has been asking for a while now, basically saying the updates and everything else what they've done since Australia just hasn't worked. So the car is basically back to its very basic 2019 spec car, which is very interesting. So halfway through the season, so to speak, and they're already back to the start again, which is not good for Haas. Especially, you see last season with Haas, they had such a good season battling with Renault, trying to battle for the fourth spot, and now they're having these further down the grid. But like I say, with Rich Energy just making a mountain out of a molehill, saying that they're uncompetitive and all this other rubbish is just bizarre. And I think for Hass's sake, if they can, at the end of the season, I would just get rid of Rich Energy and clean slate, start again, and look at better investors who are going to back the team and support the team, not to spout rubbish out on social media because that's just not good for anybody, especially Haas.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a sort of a positive and a negative. But I'm quite glad because obviously they originally Rich Energy were meant to sponsor Williams, but they pulled out the deal at the last
Yeah,
minute and went with Haas. And I think if we have to look on that positively because I don't think Williams could have. They wouldn't have survived this. I don't think. I think losing that supporter and equally that sort of negative vibe that seems to be surrounding Haas and Rich Energy. Obviously, Haas have got themselves ingrained in American racing. Haas Stewart is a big team out in IndyCar and NASCAR, so they've got the funds and the infrastructure for a race team. But I think it's good PR. I think because Rocket announced that they are going to be sticking as Williams' title sponsor for the next 3 to 5 years. So I think that's really good PR from Rocket. They've seen that obviously this chaos is going on with Rich Energy, and to then announce that you're going to be the title sponsor for the car that you're with as to help them develop and get back to a position where they can be competitive again. That was a good PR move from Rocket.
yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
yes. So moving on to this upcoming weekend, and we've got the British Grand Prix, of course, at Silverstone. We've got plenty of our community members and drivers there at the moment, and it's potentially Ferrari have already come out. Mattia Binotto's come out and said that it's not going to suit the car. Of course, Toto Wolff has said that at pretty much every race so far this season. Is that Binotto trying to play down Ferrari's chances, or do you reckon Mercedes going to kind of hopefully get back to? Well, I say hopefully are going to for them hopefully get back to a position where they dominate again, like we saw. Obviously, they were struggling with the higher temperatures out in Austria and France, but now obviously it's going to be much cooler this weekend. It seems like it's going to be another decent weekend for the Mercedes team.
I agree. I think it is going to be a Mercedes dominant weekend. I think the struggles what Ferrari have got are genuine, and I think Binotto is pretty much. There's no point lying or building up false hope. He knows the situation Ferrari in at the minute. It's not good for them. They obviously want to be fighting Mercedes here this weekend. Last year they won the race with Seb coming in first, so I can't see personally Ferrari, but unless we have some sort of issue on track or mechanics or something with Mercedes, personally, where at the minute they look bulletproof Mercedes on that point, but Ferrari, I think they're going to need a lot of luck this weekend to win because Mercedes usually go well here, as proved with how dominant Lewis has been around this tracks, and yeah, you're probably going to end up with a Mercedes 1-2 or Ferrari probably fighting with Red Bull is my best guess.
Yeah, Lewis on for a sixth British Grand Prix win. So yeah, I think I don't know. People have their reservations with Lewis. I've never had a problem with him. The fact that I think people don't like the fact that he sort of has a life away from Formula One and seems to care about that. I don't have an issue with that. I think I don't see the problem with drivers kind of having interests outside of Formula One. He's very focused as soon as you get in the car. And I think people don't like that he sounds like he's getting stroppy. But I think if you're the best driver of definitely of your generation, if not one of all time, you're gonna know the car inside out. You're gonna get stroppy if it doesn't work. And we saw in the past, we've seen plenty of drivers that when the car doesn't work for them, Seb does the same. Seb he's a very good driver. Drivers that are of the absolute top tier, they can feel when a car isn't working for them, or they can feel when their performance is slipping. And Lewis gets a lot of flack for complaining and then equally having this sort of extravagant lifestyle outside of Formula One. But he goes back to Britain. He'll get that kind of hometown welcome as always. But I think it'll be interesting this weekend because obviously, although he is the number one driver in Britain, I think with George, with Lando, and sort of with Alex as well, it'll be interesting to see if it's complete adoration for Lewis or whether the fans will start to recognise the young guys coming in.
Yeah, that is a good point actually. I think obviously you'll get the majority supporting Lewis, but from the people I know that's going this weekend and other bits I've seen on social media, there is a lot of Lando fans going there this weekend. So I think it's going to be good to see for a British point of view at their home race, more Brits fighting and racing in F1 again. We've had a lot of Lewis and fair play to him. He's won many races, many titles. It's good to be able to cheer different people if you so choose. I've got a question for you briefly, if you don't mind. Christian Horner recently came out and said, "On current form, Max is better than Lewis." Do you agree with that?
Um, I wouldn't. Probably on track, I think Max is more. I think because he has to fight the car a lot more. He has to because he knows that he's got to pull more out of the car than Lewis does. And Lewis knows that essentially, as long as he doesn't make a mistake, that he's got the car that will take him to a podium at best, or a win at best, a podium at worst. Whereas Max knows if he wants to get on the podium, then he has to get every single point one of a mile an hour out of that Red Bull. So yeah, at the moment, Max is probably driving. Uh, it's better than Lewis, but on a whole, I wouldn't say maybe maybe his form is better, but I wouldn't say so. I still don't put Lewis in the same. I wouldn't put Max in the same class as Lewis. I think Max has still got a lot to learn. He is very good. I think he is still slightly not overrated, but sort of I think people think he's a lot better than he is because he is very easily outshining his teammate. Um, I think if Pierre was a lot quicker, I think that we wouldn't be revering Max so much, which I think is elevating sort of Max's position in the team. But obviously Red Bull are now building around Max. But yeah, I don't know. Christian Horner, he's always said that he'll always back his driver.
Yeah.
I still think Lewis is the greatest driver of my generation and the previous generation. I think he goes toe to toe with the likes of Senna and Schumacher, Clark, Stewart for being the greatest of all time.
Yeah, that is uh, valid point. I personally would love to see Max in the Mercedes alongside Lewis. I know it'd be very explosive. It'd be like Alonso Hamilton-esque time, but it'd just be fascinating to see the young pretender, so to speak, the next world champion. That some people keep saying how he would get on against Lewis. Could he rattle Lewis and force him into mistakes similar to what Nico Rosberg did that year? It's going to be interesting to see how Max gets on. Like you say, his teammate, unfortunately for Pierre, is not doing very well, is he, at the moment in that Red Bull? So yeah, I think overall, I think Christian's just doing and saying what he can to keep hold of Max and keep his driving because he knows the likes of Ferrari and Mercedes are definitely going to be sniffing around him if Red Bull can't deliver a race-winning car regularly.
Yeah, and I think Christian's going to do that because he saw what happened with Daniel. And although I think Red Bull last season already had their mind on set on the fact that they were going to push Max as the number one going forward, I think Christian was probably a little bit taken back by the fact that Daniel decided to go to Renault, who were performing worse, and we can see from this season they haven't really improved. But I think it's definitely Christian trying to keep his drivers happy. He hasn't once sort of criticised Pierre, and he's been building Max up and up and up, and yeah, so that's only going to do wonders for Max's confidence. And obviously Max has now got to learn that professionalism to kind of do sort of what Lewis does. Lewis doesn't let his ego get to him, and he doesn't make silly mistakes. He gets in the car, game like visor comes down, game face, and he just gets on with the job. And that's what Max needs to do. If he's gonna go to the next level, he just needs to get in the car every weekend and just drive it to his best ability. And yeah, potentially we might see him in a faster car in a few years' time if Red Bull can't seem to get any more power out of that Honda unit. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I think it's for the next few years, whilst Hamilton's still attached to Mercedes, I don't buy that Hamilton wants to go to Ferrari. I think every Formula One driver probably has that idyllic sort of thought about going and sitting in the Ferrari because it is such an iconic car. But Lewis is so ingrained at Mercedes. He's been with that engine supplier for his entire career that I just can't see him driving for another team. And whilst he's there, I can't see Max joining him.
Yeah, I probably agree with you there. Why would you leave a team that's currently delivering you world titles and wins? It makes no sense to me either, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's the same. Do you buy into these rumours about Seb retiring?
No, I think the media they they'll have seen he's recently got married and he's a very private person, as he said. He's got a young family and he never really you never really hear anything about him when he's outside of F1. I just think because Ferrari are struggling, Seb's obviously struggling. He's made a few noticeable mistakes on track. I think people are just trying to find ways to find reasons why he's making these mistakes. I think he still will be in F1 next year. I think he still loves racing F1. I just think at this current moment, the whole situation at the team with not performing how he wants it to is just frustrating for him. And I think if Ferrari can deliver a better car, more competitive car next year, I think he'll be back to the old Seb ways next year. I don't think he'll retire personally now.
No, I can't see it at the moment. I think he's still got a lot to give. But the problem is, and SJD says it here, is that people people just get bored of the same people winning, and we've only seen in the last how many years it is, well, especially in the turbo hybrid era, we've only seen Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes win. And it's the same, and I think that a lot of that is why people kind of don't really say they don't like Lewis or don't really sort of like appreciate his talents, is because I imagine to him, to sort of this generation, he is the Michael Schumacher. When I was growing up, I could not stand Michael Schumacher because I hated Ferrari dominating. I hated it. I used to
Yeah,
get so bored. The 2002 season where he won the title with about 7 races to go was just dull, and it was. Yeah, and I think fans are probably the same now. You've got this turbo hybrid era where the Mercedes are leagues above everyone else. You've got Ferrari who've just about sort of caught up to them, and then Red Bull that are just about hanging on. And I think the fans are just hoping that 2021 brings around some new rules where the cars will get easier to drive and well to overtake and promote close racing. But I don't know. I think it's going to be tricky. I don't think we're going to see mass changes. I don't think what people are expecting to happen. I think we're going to see slight changes, but I think
yeah,
whilst we're still using V6s, we're still using hybrid engines. Mercedes have already got that infrastructure to be dominant. Ferrari have got the funds to throw as much money into it as possible. Like whether they've got a salary cap on it and a cost cap on it, I think they've teams will always find loopholes. So I think we're still, for the foreseeable future, going to see these two slash three teams kind of dominating Formula One.
yeah, yeah. I can't. Yeah, I agree. I can't see 2021 being too dramatic. It's probably going to change it up a little bit, but yeah, yeah, we'll see. It is frustrating just to see one team winning, winning, winning all the time, like you say with Michael and Ferrari. I'm very frustrated, as many other people, with Mercedes winning all the time. It's just one of those things. Mercedes have done the best out of anybody, and you can't really fault them for that, can you? Really, everybody else needs to catch up and try and beat them, but at the minute, Mercedes is just too good.
Yep. Yep. So we'll deal with that for now. And but whilst we're kind of talking about, we were talking about Silverstone, 'cause that's where our jump off point for that conversation started. I'm just going to go on a quick rant quickly around
Go for it.
ticket pricing in Formula One, especially at Silverstone. And I don't know about you, but I think the ticketing pricing at Silverstone is outrageous. I think
Yep.
it's there's no need for it to be as expensive as it is. With the problems we've seen recently with F1 sort of losing popularity because it's lost its free to air TV deals and the like. The fact that a general admission ticket, so this is without a grandstand, you have to find yourself or take a fold up chair and take potentially a poncho and an umbrella if it rains, is £185 for Friday to Sunday. That is crazy money
Yeah.
for 3 days, because essentially you've got Friday, which is you've got two practice sessions and you've got qualifying for F3 and F2 and a couple of other smaller support races. I'd imagine I haven't seen the support set up for this weekend, but that's generally a Friday. So it's kind of you can kind of watch. I'd be there for. I'd like to watch the maybe one practice session, but then I'd like to see maybe F2 qualifying. Saturday, obviously, you've got the F2 feature race, you've got the F3 feature race, you've got qualifying. Good race. So essentially, you've got two days, Saturday, Sunday, of solid racing. I don't think that's worth over £90 a day, essentially, or say for the Saturday and Sunday, and 185 for just general admission. I mean, going up through the tickets, you've got Farm Village Vale £265, Stowe £285, Woodcote £330, Luffield £335, Beckett's £389, and the Pit Straight and Club. So the final two corners and the Pit Straight, £465 for the weekend.
Yeah.
I don't understand their pricing, because obviously tracks all around the world charge different prices, and obviously some tracks I understand are helped by the government, so they can kind of lower their prices. Some, like Silverstone, aren't helped by the government, so they kind of get to regulate their own prices. But I think Formula One have got to step in at some point and say you're outpricing, because the problem is that people will pay it. You've got fans, die-hard fans will pay it. But I don't think it's like football. It's the same thing as football. Football prices we've all decided are it's too expensive. So they cost capped away tickets in the Premier League. I think it was it £20 or £30, one of the two.
£30, I think it was, yeah.
And I don't understand why Formula One can't say to Silverstone, okay, right, you can do that, but you have to cost, if you're going to do that, fine, you can charge the money for grandstand seats, but for general admission, if you're charging someone to essentially just walk in, and you're charging them 185 quid for those 3 days, you've got to cap that, because otherwise it just becomes you're just taking money off them for taking up space.
And for me, I don't know. I don't know if you're aware of it, but the Sunday, I've done general admission on. It was the first time I ever went to the British Grand Prix. I did general admission, and the Sunday, if you aren't queuing up at a gate at least 4 o'clock in the morning for when the gates open at 6, you're not going to get a good spot in general admission. I turned up at the gate at 5:30, thinking I'll give myself half an hour, plenty of time to get queued up and get in. I'm not making it up, a word of a lie here. It was 500 deep, the queue, on that one gate. We got in, and by the time we got in, because we were checking his bags and checking everything, we got all the chairs and everything. By the time we got in, because we went and sat down near Club Corner on general admission, we got in and we barely got a decent spot. We could just about see through a crack in the fence at the circuit, and it's insane, because what a lot of people might not realise is, if you've never been to British Grand Prix general admission, you really have to get there early for race day, and then you've got to stay in that spot all day. And I found to a point where it was 1:30, and I found myself nodding off. and that wasn't because the racing was boring. It's because I was absolutely shattered, and it's very frustrating. I then upgraded to grandstand seating, and I did club corner and international pit straight. And at that time, I thought it was £350, and I thought that was expensive. And now, what did you say it was? £465,
Yeah.
and that's gone up. That's gone up in 4 years. It's like just over £100 in 4 years, 4 or 5 years, which is just it's astronomical. For example, you can see I speak to a lot of fans, and I've done obviously races abroad and stuff, and I know a lot of British people are doing races abroad, Europe now, because it's just simply cheaper. I did the Hungarian Grand Prix last year, race ticket, flights, and accommodation all cost me in total £600 for 5 days.
Yeah, and I mean, I was looking at doing the same thing. A weekend ticket in Hungary is you can get one for a decent grandstand. In fact, I really want to go because it's the one that faces or it's one that's just next to the chicane in the second sector. So
Yeah,
obviously you get the cars coming up the hill towards you, that quick left-hander, they go round and then go around the chicane. So you get to sit there, £90 for the weekend.
yeah.
And
Last,
yeah, obviously you get to go to obviously you're biased. You get to go to Budapest, beautiful city. But I mean, I'm fortunate enough. I'm going to Monza this year for the Italian Grand Prix, and the tickets out there. I got a grandstand seat, and I'm in La Piscina, which is the grandstand that's sort of at the end of the pit lane, and so I'm on the pit straight just before the Retifidio, the first chicane, and that's 180 for the weekend. Which, and if you put that into perspective, so I'm essentially sitting on the pit straight at the end of the pit lane, so I get to see all the cars coming out and what's going on in
yeah.
the pit lane. I've got easy access to the podium at the end of the race. I can see the first corner pretty much perfectly, and I'm paying less than what people are paying this weekend for general admission.
It's yeah. It's astronomical, and I was just about to say with Hungary as well. Last year, as we was leaving, they was giving out flyers for every fan, and if you use the code on the flyer, you could get silver grandstand seats, which was say I did a three-corner grandstand last year, and that's fantastic. By the way, I highly recommend that. But they did a Silverstone, the silver grandstands. I can't remember whereabouts it was on the circuit, but with this leaflet, it worked out. We checked it on the phone. It worked out at £65 for 3 days
Yep,
with this leaflet, which just
it's crazy. It's
it is. And I understand um, Hungary might not be as well off as the Brits might be in terms of wages and stuff like that. Fair enough, but you can't have such a huge gap like that between tracks, because why would you, it makes no sense to go to the British Grand Prix if you can spend £600 to have what is essentially a holiday abroad for 5 days, because you not only you've got those Silverstone tickets in consideration, you've then got to work out where you're staying, whether you're camping or if you. I wouldn't even recommend a hotel, not those prices. So you could be looking like close to £1,000 by the time you're done.
oh
If you go
easily.
in a grandstand seat, say you're going for a hotel, and then you're spending money on food and drink and stuff, and that's just no disrespect to Northamptonshire, it's a lovely place, but that's just to go to Northamptonshire. If you're spending £1,200 for 3 days in Northamptonshire, I'd rather spend £1,200 going to a race somewhere else in Europe with guaranteed weather and money in my pocket. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's before you even get there and buy merchandise. And I think we've seen
Exactly.
teams extorting a lot of
Yes.
money out of fans recently, and I, we know that you and I are big fans of McLaren. But I mean, McLaren are guilty of it at the moment. I tweeted out about it last night. They're selling a baseball cap for £30, £30 for a hat, and it's just like, and obviously the team T-shirt this year I think was about 45 pounds or something like that, and it's just, yes, that's the same as you pay for a football shirt, but it's a lot of money to follow something, and I get it. If you're a dedicated fan, you'll pay the money. Wherever, for any sport, any place, if you're a big enough fan, they'll pay it. But I don't
Yep.
think that it's ethical to do that. You can't just you can't just bet that, or you can't just extort this money out of your fans and take advantage of the fact that they'll get the merch each year. You know that it will they'll pay the money for the tickets and for all of the extras that come with it. It's, I don't know, at some point they need to work out what's an affordable cost for their fans, because otherwise what you'll do is you'll just drive them off.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're aware, a friend of mine messaged me this evening. The teams don't have really any say in pricing trackside, but a friend of mine bought a McLaren T-shirt trackside tonight, and I think you point out it was £45 for that T-shirt. He paid £65 trackside for it this evening, which is just eye-watering. And if you say 1 in 3 people spend £45 at the British Grand Prix this weekend on a T-shirt, and you're getting 120,000 people, and that is a lot of money coming into the circuit, plus the all the ticket prices and stuff. It's amazing to think how Silverstone was ever struggling, to be honest, with the British Grand Prix.
Yeah, of course they've just signed a new contract. Will be on the calendar until 2024, so we're going to expect to seeing racing around Silverstone tonight. I don't actually like Silverstone all that much. I prefer it went to another track, but I'm glad to see that British Grand Prix will be sticking on the F1.
That's another subject.
F1, I know, that's another rant.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the final 10 minutes, what we'll do is we'll quickly run over. Of course, we are the Esports Racing League, and we did have our first pre-season races this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We'll quickly go over the results from them, and we started off on Monday, the No Assist League. Sab and I, of course, commentate on that one, and it was a good race, a good start, a bit of a messy start to the race. We saw a few incidents, but of course we've got a lot of guys new to No Assist, so you can't really afford any blame on them. But Scopefielder came away with a good win. Scott, the reigning champion, came in second. Unfortunately, two-stop strategy just didn't quite work out for him. And rookie driver FPL Charlie, a debut podium in third place. So yeah, it's looking in No Assist League looking good this season.
It really is, and Charlie, unluckily, had that spin, and that probably cost him the race victory, which would have been even better for him. He did look very fast on Monday night against Scopefielder. Scopefielder, like I said Monday, he didn't make a mistake and got the job done, and hopefully we'll get to see a good battle with them three and Speed Queen and whoever else comes into it for the new season.
Yeah, it's going to be, hopefully it's going to be a very good season, and we're going to see a lot of guys. Of course, we've got the likes of Speed Queen 80. She's yet to come back, so hopefully we're going to have 3, 4, if not more drivers fighting over race wins each week, which what we like to see. We'd like to see plenty of drivers going for it. Performance League was on Tuesday night, and it's going to be commentated this season by Malk and Tim. So an interesting pairing in the commentary box, but I think they did very well. And that was Scope made it 2 and 2 nights, and he picked up the race victory there ahead of LR Archie, and Archie also in the No Assist League, and ahead of one of the reigning champions. We've amalgamated 2 performance leagues into one, so you've got 2 champions racing in one league this season, so you'll find the undisputed one by the end of the season, I'd imagine. And you had Skyzy in third position, and Sab, you were involved on Tuesday night. How did you find the race and the lobby there?
Very, very challenging. I qualified P7, I think it was, which I thought was pretty good for me compared to the guys I was racing against up at the top. Scopefielder, Archie, and Skyzy. It's the first time I've ever been in the same lobby as Skyzy, and you can see why he's a reigning champion. He's very, very fast. Scopefielder I've raced against many, many times in Performance League, and I know exactly what he's like. I can sense there's going to be a Williams coming his way for the first race of the season if he carries on this form.
Yeah, Skyzy slightly avert to the Williams, hasn't he? He was sitting in it a lot last season, so I think he's probably used to Claire Williams talking to him every weekend. So yeah, performance looking very strong, as you say. So yeah, make sure you check that one out on Tuesday nights. Then on to Wednesday night. So last night we had the equal performance leagues, 3 leagues on a Wednesday night: F1, F2, and F3. Obviously, F1 the fastest drivers, F3 I won't say the slowest drivers, but obviously out of the 3 tiers as the 3rd tier. First league was F1, and that was won by VSR Marquez's Sammy the Pito in 2nd place and Foxy Red 2000 in 3rd. Now, VSR Marquez's, otherwise known as TSO Dems, I'm sure you've seen him involved in other leagues, and equally he's quite a fun one to follow on Twitter if you don't already. And he actually won by utilising a 3-stop strategy.
Wow.
He was just dominant last night. He had, in the first stint, he built up a 36-second lead. Was able to come in, put another set of tyres on, pulled that lead out to 26 seconds again, came in once again, and yeah, did the 3-stop and ended up still winning by around 6 seconds or so. So yeah, he absolutely blew the competition away, finishing ahead of Sam, who's no slouch at all, and equally Foxy Red 2000. We've seen it in the past, a race winner in Invictus, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing Foxy at the Monaco Grand Prix round 2 of the calendar, because he picked up he enjoys racing around then. He picked up a race win in between the games when we did a casual race. I believe it was a 50% race around there, and yeah, so he potentially will be a threat. But yeah, VSR Marquez with a bit of a statement there.
That is a bit of a statement. Wow, I'm glad I'm not in the same league as him. He sounds very fast indeed.
Yeah, so yeah, can't wait to find out what goes on in F1 for the next, if you're second pre-season race, and then off into round 1. F2 last night was won by Partridge 99. Partridge absolutely cracking lap in qualifying. Qualified on the front row on the medium tyres. Took the lead of the race on a lap 5, I think, and then from there managed to hold off Aaron J. Spence, who was trying to come back in, but unfortunately Aaron got caught behind traffic for a couple of laps, and that kind of ended his challenge towards the end of the race. Colin J. unfortunately got by myself halfway through the race, and he went on to pick up the final podium place. And yeah, so Partridge in first, Aaron in second, Colin in third, and for F2, obviously I'm best placed to discuss this one. It's looking very competitive this season. We saw plenty of drivers last night that potentially could challenge, and yeah, I obviously commentated on by Energy Dan, so if you want to go and check out his Twitter, he always gets the streams done very nicely indeed, so make sure you follow Dan on Twitter. And it's going to be a really interesting season in F2, because there's plenty of drivers that can challenge up the front. We've got 4 Equal Performance League champions, 10 previous Equal Performance League winners, so yeah, F2 might be one of the ones to watch this season. And then leading on to F3, which is obviously your domain this season as the admin and driver in. And do you want to talk us through what happened last night?
Well, let's not talk about myself. Well, I managed to get pole position against Ferocious Dan. Ferocious Dan absolutely on fire last night. He looked set for pole position, and I just picked him right at the last few seconds of qualifying. We was going all right at the start of the race. Me and Dan was running quite closely together. Dan pitted earlier than me. I left it a lap longer and decided I'd go for a spin, and went on several spins throughout the race. It didn't work out very good for me. Dan went on to take the race victory, which I think in the end he deserved. He didn't make any mistakes really. He's definitely one to watch this season, especially in his McLaren again. They're the fast constructors, aren't they, with F1 Richard. I'm just trying to remember who came second now. Bear with me. I tried to forget
What
this race. So
synchronously?
we,
There we go.
there
Synchronously
you
came
go.
in second.
Synchronously came second, and Brennan's came third. F1 Richard was fourth. DMAC, and then myself, Luke Bailey, in seventh. Only seven of us ended up finishing. It was a messy race in the end. Really, a lot of crashes and DNFs. Not like dangerous crashes or recklessness. It was just I just think because it's pre-season and everybody's still a bit rusty, people were just trying to find the feet again. And I think, I don't know what you think, but the Spanish Grand Prix of Barcelona track itself this year is a lot trickier than last year's track. So a few people were getting caught out by it, especially a similar spot where I got caught out. But yeah, F3 I think is going to be really enjoyable to be taking part in, and also really enjoyable to watch because there's a lot of good competitive guys in there. If I can stay on the track, I might be one of them as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch this season.
Yeah, I can attest to that. F3, of course. Not to brag, but I'm the reigning F3 champion, and yeah, I can attest it is a very fun league to watch. Make sure you check in with Malc on Wednesday nights there, and yeah, there's plenty of drivers in the F3 league that can challenge, and I think especially that there's no one to defend their title this season will make it extra exciting because you're going to have everyone's going to want to go for it. They know that it's there to be taken, and yeah, so I think F3, as always, is usually one of the most exciting leagues to watch because you never know what's going to happen. But yeah, I mean F2 this week, as I was saying, the top three in qualifying was split by 32 thousandths of a second in qualifying, so that was quite close and quite interesting. Aaron J. Spence and myself, teammates in the McLaren, we were split by 8 thousandths of a second, so it's F2 looking mega close. And in fact, just looking at the matrix, your qualifying time would have put you fifth in F1. So I wouldn't feel
Wow.
too downhearted about your performance there because that was a quick lap there on the soft tyres. And so yeah, it's. I think the Equal Performance League's looking pretty fun for this season. So obviously we've got pre-season 2 next week in Mexico City at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and then obviously we go to round 1 the week after in Austria. So make sure you check out that on Wednesday nights, and we've got, yeah, as I said, no assists on Monday, performance on Tuesday, and equal performance on Wednesday. So plenty of leagues. And if you want to get yourself on the grid, go to the website, invictusracingleague.com, go to the sign-up page, get yourself on the grid. We've got a reserve league at the moment. We've got plenty of reserves waiting for positions, but we do have reserve positions in the league each week. So if we do have drivers having to drop out for personal reasons or holiday, then we do have reserves coming in. So if you do want to get yourself on the grid, make sure you go to the page and check it out. And as we move towards the end of the podcast, and we move towards Sab's favourite part. Of course, we're gonna. I previously called this the big question. However, I might rename it to the hot lap. So what happens is I will give Sab 1 minute, where I will ask him a question, and he has 1 minute to give me the answer and explain his answer behind why he's given it. So, of course, with the British Grand Prix coming up in the next few days, I'm going to ask him with 1 minute on the clock who is the greatest British F1 driver of all time and why.
Wow. Wow. Well, that is tough to say. Um, wow. Yeah. um, I'm gonna have to say, Lewis. He's a five-time champion now. He's out there on his own with that many titles as a British guy. We look very looking like he's going to get his sixth, heading towards Michael Schumacher. Yes, he's got the best car at the minute, but you need the best car most times to get the victories and stuff. There has been some great champions in the past, Jim Clark and Damon Hill and Jackie Stewart and what have you. But Lewis has just seized the moment in the last 7-8 years, hasn't he? Really, and been dominant. So I'm gonna have to say Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, good shout. I think you can't look past Lewis at the moment. I think even with the likes of Jim Clark and Jackie Stewart, James Hunt, I think Lewis, regardless of the fact that obviously it's easy to look at those guys that drove the fastest or drove cars that were a lot less assist helped with. Well, you can see these guys, obviously it looks like they're not having to fight the cars like we saw back in the past, but Lewis, he is on another level. I think if you put him in any car in any period of history, he's just a born racer. So yep, would tend to agree with you there. But if you disagree, guys, if you have a different thought about who the greatest British driver of all time is in Formula One, let us know on Twitter. Go to our Twitter page at InvictusRL, where you can let us know on the website. Equally, if you'd like to let us know personally, you can go to at GT2_driving for myself and at Alan Sabatino for Sab, where you can tell him that he was wrong and it is definitely not Lewis, and how dare you choose Lewis. And so, but for this evening, Sab, as we look to wrap up, and I'll ask you one more question about the British Grand Prix coming up. Let's have your pole position and who's going to take the race win.
Both Lewis Hamilton.
I think we'll go snap there. I think Lewis has got it. I think he after last race in Austria, I think he is more than hungry to come back and pick another one in front of the home crowd. So yeah, I think we're going to look to see a dominant Mercedes display this weekend. So I'm sure you guys all have different thoughts about that, and obviously wanted to see something different. But I think the silver arrow is going to do it this weekend. But for tonight, guys, and for this week, thank you very much for joining us. We will be back next Thursday here on twitch.tv, so make sure you follow and subscribe to the channel. Equally, if you are new, make sure you go to the website invictusracingleague.com. We're on socials, InvictusRL, Twitter and Instagram, Invictus Racing League on Facebook. You can donate to the league by going to the Invictus on the website, where you can donate and help out the league grow. And of course, if you are a driver in the leagues and part of the community, you can help the league grow, get into a position where we can give out certain extra goodies to our drivers and community members and make the league a bigger and better place. So yeah, make sure you check out the Invictus on the website. Equally, if you want to find out any extra details, go to the website, and if you've got any questions, drop in a question to the get in touch section and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions for yourself. But for this evening and for this week, we will see you next week for the 6th episode of the Invictus Racing League podcast. Thank you very, very much for joining us, and from Sab and I, good evening.